Today we're stepping into a scene that, on the surface, looked like the absolute pinnacle of the American dream.
But as we'll see, the foundation of that dream was maybe built on something else entirely. Something like silence, control, and terror.
We are, of course, unpacking the tragedy of the Menendez family.
So let's set the scene. Beverly Hills, California.
Right. It's late summer 1989. And if you picture this house, I mean, the sources we synthesized describe it so vividly. This immaculate driveway, the perfect landscaping.
It's the kind of place where, as one source put it, success had settled there permanently.
That's such a good line. And it captures the image of the family, too. You had José Menendez, a powerful, really powerful entertainment executive.
Known for being incredibly controlled, obsessive even, and his wife, Kitty, beside him, maybe already a bit distant, looking away.
The point is, everything appeared flawless. Nothing about that one evening, August 20th, suggested it would end in gunfire.
But it did. Two figures burst in with shotguns.
It was sudden, brutal. José was hit first, and the documentation suggests he just collapsed in disbelief.
And Kitty screamed. She tried to run, scramble away, but then the room just filled with smoke and blood.
A perfect family erased. And what was left was this vacuum of horror.
Right. And our mission today, looking at sources that frame this as a mirror of blood and silence, is to see how that vacuum got filled.
Because these analyses suggest some families bury their secrets. But with the Menendez family, it seems they were buried by them. We have to unpack those conflicting truths.
Okay, so let's start right after the crime, the immediate aftermath.
The police arrive, and then the two sons, Lyle and Erik, they return home.
And there's stories that they were out at the movies. They just happened to come home to all of this.
Lyle, the older one, he seemed tense but focused. Erik, though.
Erik was a mess, shaking, crying uncontrollably. They were clinging to each other, playing the part of the traumatized sons.
And it worked. I mean, one source makes this chilling point, saying their grief looks so real that, quote, America believed them. The facade held.
For a little while, anyway.
That's the thing. Because what happened in the days and weeks right after the murders, that's where the story starts to get very strange.
Absolutely. The journalists covering the investigation at the time, they all zeroed in on the brothers' behavior. It wasn't normal.
They didn't crumble. You'd expect them to fall apart.
Instead, they started spending money. A staggering amount of money.
The sources all call it the great spending spree. And we aren't talking about, a little comfort shopping.
No, this was reckless. It was almost compulsive. We're talking Ferraris, Rolex watches, designer clothes.
Personal tennis coaches. Eating out at the most expensive restaurants in Beverly Hills every night.
The money, as one source puts it so bluntly, flowed out like the blood that had soaked the living room carpet.
That image is, wow. And that contrast, the deep grief they were performing versus this wild, conspicuous spending.
Yeah.
It's just so suspect.
It is. Juan Melissa says their grief had a strange shine to it. And that shine, that financial hemorrhage, was the first real crack in the wall.
So what's the psychology there? I mean, was it just greed?
Well, that was the public's first conclusion. But the documents suggest a couple of possibilities. First, it could be this massive instant reclaiming of power, a release from their father's obsessive financial control.
So they were finally free to spend the money they felt they were owed.
Exactly. But there's a darker angle, too, that the spending was a way to numb themselves, using the shock of wealth to blunt the reality of what they'd just done.
Either way, it looked like acquisition, not grief.
And that recklessness is what led to the big break in the case. It wasn't the police who figured it out.
No, it was a confession.
Erik couldn't handle it, the secret, the trauma. He confessed everything to his therapist, Dr. Oziel.
And that conversation was recorded. Once that tape came out, with Erik saying, "We did it," everything changed. Public sympathy just evaporated.
Instantly, it turned into handcuffs. And that brings us to the trial, which is where this story gets even more complicated.
Because the defense had to completely reframe the entire narrative. They had to change what that house on Elm Drive represented.
Right. Suddenly, it wasn't a mansion of success anymore. The defense painted it as a prison disguised as luxury.
And the sons started detailing these specific, horrific allegations of abuse. Abuse that, frankly, America just didn't know how to process.
The claims were devastating. Their father, José, wasn't just controlling. They described him as brutal, obsessive, terrifying in private.
And the abuse they detailed, it wasn't just psychological.
No, the trial accounts are clear. They claimed the sexual abuse, the rape, started when they were just little kids and went on for years, always with threats of violence if they ever told anyone.
And the mother, Kitty, where was she in all of this?
According to the son's testimony, she knew and looked away. She was portrayed as either complicit through her silence or maybe just too terrified and dependent herself to do anything.
It's just this closed ecosystem of terror. And that completely changes the motive for the killings, doesn't it?
It does. They testified they weren't killing for money. They were killing out of fear. The defense's whole argument was that on that night, they truly believed, if we don't act now, we will die.
So it was self-preservation.
That's what they argued. An act of self-preservation born from years of sustained terror. And this brings us to the central conflict of the whole case.
Which is what?
How do you square that image of deep trauma with the image of the Rolexes and the Ferraris? One analysis just nails it with this quote. America didn't know how to process abused boys with Rolexes.
That says it all. The idea of a victim in the early 90s, it just didn't look like that. Didn't wear designer clothes.
No. The defense was basically asking the jury to accept that trauma can hide behind affluence, that it doesn't always look like poverty or helplessness. They were arguing for battered child syndrome.
Arguing that the abuse was the context for the murder.
Exactly. That they weren't greedy killers, but desperate people pushed to a breaking point. It was a huge gamble.
So let's talk about the trials, because there were two of them. The first one was a media circus. It was televised.
Oh, absolutely. And America took sides. Living rooms became jury boxes. You had two completely opposing camps.
On one side, you had the prosecution's view. Spoiled rich kids. They made up this convenient abuse story to justify their greed.
But the other side saw them as deeply broken children. Their trauma was, as one source said, just too ugly to package neatly for the legal system.
So the jury was faced with these two impossible narratives.
And they couldn't agree. The evidence was just too messy, too conflicting. The result was a hung jury, a mistrial.
Which is incredible. It's like the truth was just too big to fit inside one simple verdict.
Right. But that led to the second trial, and the second trial was different. The sources describe it as being much colder, more controlled.
Yeah.
The judge severely restricted the abuse testimony. So all that complex context, the emotion, the years of terror that defined the first trial.
It was cut out.
Largely, yes, they could hint at it, but they couldn't spend weeks detailing the specifics. The legal focus shifted away from the why, the reason for the fear, and back onto the act itself.
So the complexity was just edited out of the story.
Precisely. The case was made simpler for the jury. 2 sons, 2 guns, 2 dead parents. Premeditation, not provocation.
Yeah, and that simplification worked. For the prosecution, at least.
It did. The verdict was swift. Guilty. First-degree murder. Life in prison. No chance of parole.
And that's pretty much where the story ends for them. The mansion was sold, the money disappeared, and the sons grew old behind bars.
But the case itself, the reflection it created, that endures.
It really does. This deep dive shows it was never just about greed. It became this mirror for how we as a society handle victims who just didn't look the way we expect them to.
It's a story about power protecting itself and abuse hiding behind success. It really forced a confrontation with our assumptions.
Seems like the final tragedy is that they were trapped, abused in private, but seen as manipulative and greedy in public. An impossible situation.
And that's why the sources suggest the case doesn't really ask if murder is wrong. Of course it is, that's obvious.
What does it ask then?
It asks whether the trauma of abuse ever truly ends. For Lyle and Erik, their childhood led them to a violent act, and that act led them to a different kind of prison for the rest of their lives.
In Beverly Hills, the pursuit of perfection killed 2 parents and imprisoned 2 sons forever.